What is up, JL Life? Modell here. You know, we've gotten quite a bit of questions on why we switched out Synergy steering for RPM. Well, in this video, we're going to go over some of the reasons why we decided to change steering systems. Enjoy! Misty has been making a lot of changes to Heathen.
Yeah.
A lot of big changes to Heathen.
Yeah.
Well, as you guys know, we recently put in new axles underneath. One of the things we wanted to do when we upgraded the axles was to upgrade the steering.
As well.
So the question is going to be, why? Why do you need to upgrade the steering? So let me start off by saying the steering hasn't failed us. There's just things about this steering that I foresee being issues down the line. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So the first thing I want to talk about are going to be the ends. These ends are rated for 1 ton. They are just about 1 inch thick. Moving underneath the other JL and measuring these ones, 1/5 of an inch thicker. Of course, I'm not saying that these are insufficient. We haven't had an issue with them, and they're working fine. It's just thicker is better. The type of wheeling we do, I would prefer something more heavy duty, and so would Misty. That's my first concern with this steering. The next concern I have is it is chromoly hardened steel, which it's held up great to getting hit on rocks. But the issue with steel, as you bang it around, it's going to rust. Luckily, we don't live in a high humidity area, so rust isn't too dangerous of a problem for us. But as you can see, you hit it, it's going to start rusting. So normally this wouldn't even be a gripe, but when you tighten the clamps, all the powder coating on the tie rod end just starts to chip and flake off like crazy. So it's going to be exposed. You could just paint it, Mo. Delete. The next issue I have with the tie rod ends of this steering is that there is no way of gripping the tie rod end, the ball joint stud, in the event you need to remove it. Now, it's not a big problem if the tie rod end is stiff or you have an impact wrench. But if you don't, and you're trying to use a wrench to get it off, that castle nut will start to turn the stud. Now, if you come into that issue, you can grab it with a pair of pliers or vice grips. However, you're risking boogering up your threads, and just it's more work than it needs to be. And again, using Steer Smarts as the example, there's an Allen key insert at the top, so you can hold it with the Allen and still wrench it off without having to pull out vice grips. However, you cannot get an impact on the drag link on the frame side. So yes. No. Which basically means you can only get a wrench on it, and if the stud is turning and and there's not a way of holding the stud in place, you're going to have headaches. Not saying you can't get it off, but there will be headaches. Another thing with the steering, every time Misty goes wheeling in it, I end up having to readjust her drag length. Some days are worse than others. The last time we went wheeling, granted it was an intense day, her steering wheel was upside down, but it does need constant adjusting. Now, if you're sitting there saying you need to tighten the clamps tighter, well, they're between 90 and 100 pounds, which is within spec. And the last thing I want to talk about, because this steering, which is one of the nice things about it, it's set for the length of both the Sport and the Rubicon axles. The nice thing about this, when we went from the Sport axles to the Rubicon axles, we were able to adjust this steering to fit. Now, it's kind of maxed out right here. This is the maximum distance that you're allowed to have the side without the adjuster nut from the lip of the tie rod or the drag link to the center of the nutsert is 3 inches, which we're right at 3 inches. Granted, I could probably suck this in probably about 1/4 of an inch and extend it on the other side, but because we knew we were changing steering and it was coming relatively quickly, I didn't bother on fine-tuning any of this. And on the other side, just to let you guys know, this is about 3 inches as well. It's a little over. And so let me articulate this clearly. Just the more of the tie rod end that's sticking out past the actual tie rod bar, it's a weak point, though it's never failed, and I will stress that. But the more of it sticking out, the more likely you're going to have a tie rod end bend when you're doing crazy stuff. I just don't want it to get there. So the question is Synergy steering bad? No, it's held up fine. I have nothing really bad to say about it. It's just I foresee these things becoming issues. If you have this steering and you love it, that's awesome. Like I said, we haven't had a failure with it. Again, it's just kind of touching on, I see these being issues in the future. And quite frankly, I'd rather go from 1 ton equivalent steering to 2.5 ton steering equivalent. But if you're looking into the steering, I'm not going to say you're going to be wrong getting it. It's relatively cheap to get the tie rod, the drag link with the stabilizer by itself. It's $700. Add an extra $70-ish for the stabilizer relocation bracket, and you're looking close to $800 for the whole setup, which isn't bad. The tie rod ends are the cheapest out of all the different companies that I've seen. And they are $45 an end. So let's change gears and talk about the things that I liked about this steering. One, it's held up great to getting dragged and hit up on rocks. No real complaints there. The ends, of course, are greasable. The adjuster sleeve makes adjusting the steering and the drag link easy once you get it installed. One of the nice things about it, if you have a lot of chaos going on up front, the steering's relatively thin and easy to fit with other products. And another cool thing about this steering, if you ever want to go from below the knuckle to on top of the knuckle, you don't have to buy a separate tie rod end. You just rotate it down and drill out the hole and put in the sleeve, and you're good to go. And another thing I liked about it, the style of the clamp to tighten the tie rod ends. Going to a jam nut, I'm not gonna lie, is a headache to deal with. But once you tighten it, you tighten it. When it's a clamp style, it's very easy to keep everything where it needs to be when you tighten it. And again, when you go to a jam nut, you have to be particularly careful not to move anything, otherwise your steering's going to be off. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this review video. I hope y'all thought I was fair and objective. Again, I'm not saying it's bad, so you fanboys can calm down. Are you going to be upset if you go Synergy? Probably not. But y'all, where's the wife at? There you are. Remember to
like, comment, subscribe, and share.
Stay tuned for the next one, y'all. Keep it easy.